I stood there holding a crumpled lottery ticket while my twin sister Madison clutched house keys, and I realized 22 years of my life had been a lie. The graduation party fell silent as Mom smiled at Madison's squeals of joy over her brand-new 3-bedroom home, while Dad avoided my eyes completely. That lottery ticket felt like tissue paper in my trembling hands. I had graduated summa cum laude with a degree in finance, while Madison barely scraped by with a communications major, yet somehow she deserved a house and I got a dollar scratch-off. Everything was about to change forever. The morning had started so differently. I remembered walking across the stage at State University, feeling the weight of my graduation cap as Professor Williams announced my name, followed by summa cum laude. My finance degree represented 4 years of late nights, part-time jobs, and countless sacrifices. The applause felt earned, genuine. Madison walked across the same stage 20 minutes later, her name called without any honors, but Mom and Dad cheered just as loudly from the audience. Now, 6 hours later, standing in our family home in suburban Denver, that achievement felt meaningless. The graduation party buzzed around me while I processed what had just happened. Aunt Susan held Madison's hand, examining the silver house keys like they were precious jewels. Uncle Mike patted Madison's shoulder, congratulating her on the generous parents and amazing future ahead. Cousin Jenny was already asking about housewarming party dates. I felt invisible holding that stupid lottery ticket. The memories started flooding back, each one a small knife twist I had somehow ignored before. Christmas mornings where Madison unwrapped designer clothes, the latest iPhone, jewelry that sparkled under our tree lights. My gifts sat beside hers. Practical books for school, office supplies for my internships, savings bonds that wouldn't mature for years. Rhonda's the responsible one, Mom would say with a smile that never quite reached her eyes when people asked about the difference. Madison's 16th birthday brought a silver Honda Civic with a giant red bow. Mine brought a bicycle and a lecture about earning independence through hard work. Madison's prom dress cost $400 and came from an exclusive boutique downtown. I wore Cousin Jenny's altered dress from 3 years earlier, and everyone complimented how resourceful and practical I was. College had been the worst part. Madison's tuition at State University appeared magically paid each semester, her dorm room costs covered, her meal plan upgraded to the premium option. She studied communications because, as Dad said, Madison's great with people. Meanwhile, I worked 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore, took out student loans that made my stomach hurt to sign, and studied finance because numbers didn't lie to you the way people did. Madison spent spring breaks in Cancun with her sorority sisters while I stayed in Denver, working extra shifts at a tax preparation office to help cover my expenses. She posted Instagram photos from beach clubs, while I posted study group selfies in the library. Even our extended family knew the pattern. Madison got experiences, I got responsibilities. Frank Brennan, my father, owned a small auto repair shop on the outskirts of town. Carol Brennan, my mother, managed the books for 3 different small businesses. They weren't wealthy, but they weren't poor either. Middle-class Colorado life with a nice house, 2 cars, annual vacations to visit Carol's sister in Arizona. The favoritism toward Madison seemed built into the foundation of our family, as natural and unquestioned as the Rocky Mountains on the horizon. But this house gift crossed a line I hadn't even known existed. Madison held those keys like a trophy while I clutched a lottery ticket that probably wouldn't win $5. The unfairness burned in my chest, making it hard to breathe normally. Everyone at the party acted like this was perfectly reasonable, like graduation gifts should obviously be unequal based on some invisible scoring system I'd never understood. "Open it!" Madison suddenly shouted, pointing at my lottery ticket. "Let's see what Rhonda won." The party guests turned toward me with expectant smiles. Carol stepped closer, her eyes bright with what looked like anticipation rather than sympathy. Frank cleared his throat but said nothing, his mechanic's hands fidgeting with a beer bottle. I looked down at the ticket in my hands. It wasn't even a normal scratch-off game. The design was different, more elaborate, with golden numbers and what looked like a special promotional logo. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to refuse to participate in this humiliation. But something in Mom's expression made me pause. She looked almost excited, like she was waiting for something specific to happen, With everyone watching, I used my fingernail to scratch away the silver coating. The first number appeared, 7, then another 7, then a third 7. The prize amount box revealed itself slowly. $3 million. The silence that followed was deafening. Madison's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, then something that looked dangerously close to rage. The house keys slipped from her fingers and hit the hardwood floor with a metallic clank that seemed to echo through the entire room. "That's impossible," Madison whispered, then louder. "That's completely impossible." But it wasn't impossible. I was holding a $3 million lottery ticket, and suddenly everyone at my graduation party was staring at me like I'd just transformed into someone completely different. The responsible, practical, overlooked daughter was now the millionaire in the family. And judging by the look on my parents' faces, this wasn't the surprise they'd been expecting at all. The chaos that followed the lottery announcement felt like watching our family explode in slow motion. Madison's face had gone from party-happy to death-stare furious in the span of 30 seconds. She bent down to snatch her house keys from the floor, gripping them so tightly her knuckles turned white. "This is unbelievable," she hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Some people get everything handed to them, don't they?" The irony of Madison Brennan accusing anyone of getting things handed to them wasn't lost on me, but I was too shocked to respond. The lottery ticket felt real in my hands, the numbers clear and unmistakable. But my brain couldn't process what $3 million actually meant. Aunt Susan rushed over with her reading glasses, examining the ticket like she was authenticating a rare artifact. "Oh my goodness, Rhonda, this is real. These are the official state lottery symbols." "You actually won." The party guests erupted into excited chatter, but their congratulations felt hollow somehow. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with text messages from family members I hadn't heard from in months. Uncle Mike, who usually ignored me at family gatherings, suddenly wanted to discuss investment opportunities and family financial planning. Cousin Jenny, who'd always sided with Madison in every childhood argument, was now my new best friend with suggestions about smart money management. But it was my parents' reaction that disturbed me most. Instead of celebrating my incredible luck, they kept exchanging worried glances across the room. Carol approached me with a forced smile that looked more nervous than happy. "Honey, this is such wonderful news, but we need to talk about the practical aspects," she said, her voice taking on the tone she used when discussing household budgets. "Lottery winnings have serious tax implications. There are smart ways to handle this kind of windfall, especially when it can benefit the whole family." Frank nodded vigorously from behind her. "Your mother's right, Rhonda. This kind of money requires careful planning. Maybe we should all sit down tomorrow and discuss how to maximize this opportunity for everyone." The way they emphasized everyone made my stomach clench. Madison was sulking by the kitchen island, stabbing at her graduation cake with unnecessary violence, while my parents were already making plans for my lottery money. Something about their reaction felt wrong, calculated, like they had expected this conversation to happen. "I think I need some air," I announced, stepping out onto our back deck. The May evening in Denver carried the crisp scent of mountain air and blooming lilacs from Mom's garden. Through the sliding glass door, I could see the party continuing without me, but the energy had shifted entirely. Everyone was talking with their heads close together, shooting glances in my direction. My phone buzzed again. Another text from a distant relative. "Heard about your good fortune. Would love to catch up soon and discuss a business opportunity that could double your winnings." Then another. "Rhonda, it's your third cousin Beth from Kansas. Mom told me about the lottery ticket. I'm starting a nonprofit and could really use your support." And another. "Hey girl, it's Stephanie from high school. Saw on Facebook about your lottery win. I'm launching a boutique and looking for investors. Call me." $3 million was apparently enough to make me every distant relative's favorite person and every acquaintance's potential business partner. But the messages that bothered me most came from my immediate family. Madison had posted on Instagram, "Some people just get lucky while others work hard for everything. Interesting how life works out." The passive-aggressive social media attack felt like classic Madison, but seeing it in writing made the unfairness crystallize in my mind. She was getting a house, and she was somehow the victim in this situation? I decided to drive to the lottery headquarters in Denver the next morning to claim my prize officially. The building on Bannock Street looked surprisingly ordinary for a place that changed people's lives daily. After 2 hours of paperwork, identity verification, and tax discussions, I walked out with confirmation that $2,100,000 would be deposited into my account after federal and state taxes. Still life-changing money, but the reality of taxes had brought me back to earth. When I returned home that afternoon, Madison's car was in the driveway, along with Tyler Jennings' black pickup truck. Tyler was Madison's on-and-off boyfriend of 3 years, a guy who worked in construction when he felt like it and had opinions about everyone else's money, despite never seeming to have any of his own. I found them in the living room with my parents, papers spread across the coffee table like they were planning a military operation. The conversation stopped abruptly when I walked in. "Rhonda!" Carol's voice was too bright, too cheerful. "Perfect timing. We were just discussing some exciting possibilities for your lottery winnings." Tyler stood up and extended his hand like we were meeting for the first time. "Rhonda, congratulations on your good fortune. I've been telling your family about some incredible investment opportunities that could really multiply your winnings." "What kind of opportunities?" I asked, not taking his hand. "Well," Tyler said, settling back onto the couch next to Madison, "my cousin owns a construction company that's expanding into luxury home renovation. They're looking for investors who want to get in on the ground floor. With your $3 million, you could easily see returns of 20 to 30% within the first year." Madison jumped in eagerly. "And Tyler knows about cryptocurrency investments too. Some of his friends have tripled their money in just 6 months." Frank leaned forward in his favorite recliner. "We were also thinking about the family business, Rhonda. The auto shop could really benefit from some modernization. New equipment? Maybe expand into hybrid vehicle repair. That's the future of the industry." Carol nodded enthusiastically. "And Madison's house payment would be so much easier to manage with a little family help. The mortgage is only $1,200 a month. You could pay that off entirely and still have plenty left for investments." I looked around the room at the 4 faces staring at me expectantly, and a cold realization washed over me. This wasn't a family celebration or even a planning session. This was a sales pitch. They had spent the last 18 hours figuring out how to spend my lottery money. "How much is Madison's house worth?" I asked quietly. Madison brightened. $240,000. It's a beautiful 3-bedroom in Thornton with a 2-car garage and mountain views. "And how much did you put down?" The question seemed to catch everyone off guard. Madison looked to our parents before answering. "Well, Mom and Dad helped with the down payment. 20%. So, about $48,000. Where did Mom and Dad get $48,000 for a down payment? The silence that followed my question stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Frank and Carol exchanged another one of their loaded looks, and Madison suddenly found her fingernails fascinating. Tyler cleared his throat. "Maybe this is a family conversation I shouldn't be part of." "No," I said firmly. "Stay. I'm curious about these investment opportunities you mentioned. What exactly does your cousin's construction company need money for?" Tyler's confidence faltered slightly. "Well, they're expanding, like I said. Equipment costs, labor, materials. Construction is expensive." "What's the name of the company?" It's called Mountain Peak Construction." "And they're registered with the Colorado Secretary of State?" Tyler's face flushed. "Of course they are. What kind of question is that?" But I was asking because my finance degree had taught me to research before investing, and something about Tyler's body language suggested Mountain Peak Construction might not exist outside of his imagination. Madison was biting her lower lip, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood, and my parents were looking everywhere except at me. "I appreciate everyone's concern about my financial planning," I said slowly, "but I think I need some time to research investment options on my own." Carol's face fell. "Honey, we just want to help you make smart decisions. This kind of money can be overwhelming for someone your age." "I'm 22, Mom. The same age as Madison. Old enough to buy a house, apparently." Frank stood up abruptly. "Rhonda, there's no need to be defensive. We're family. We help each other out. That's what families do." As I looked around the room at my family and Madison's boyfriend, all of whom seemed to have detailed plans for spending my lottery money less than 24 hours after I'd won it. One thought kept echoing in my mind. Something about this whole situation was very, very wrong. And I was going to find out exactly what that something was. The next morning, I drove to First National Bank of Colorado with a list of questions that had kept me awake all night. If my parents had $48,000 readily available for Madison's house down payment, where had that money come from? Frank's auto shop was successful, but not throw around 50 grand on a whim successful. Sandra Martinez, the bank's loan officer, pulled up my parents' account information after I explained I was concerned about family finances affecting my own financial planning. What she showed me made my blood run cold. Your parents took out a home equity loan against their house 3 months ago, Sandra explained, pointing at the computer screen. $50,000. The monthly payments are $625, and they've only made one payment so far. My parents had mortgaged their own home to buy Madison a house. They were now carrying 2 mortgage payments on Frank's auto shop income, which explained why they were so interested in my lottery winnings. But it didn't explain why they thought Madison deserved a house in the first place, or why my graduation gift was a lottery ticket that seemed suspiciously lucky. I drove to the Colorado Lottery headquarters and asked to speak with someone about the ticket I'd won. The customer service representative, a friendly woman named Patricia, pulled up the ticket information on her computer. "This is interesting," Patricia said, studying her screen. "This ticket was part of a special promotional batch released only to specific retailers 3 weeks ago. The odds of winning were significantly higher than our regular scratch-off games. 1 in 5,000 instead of 1 in 3 million. Which retailers received these promotional tickets?" Patricia consulted another screen. "Let's see. Looks like only 12 retailers statewide. Most were in the Denver metro area." She printed out a list and handed it to me. Henderson's Corner Store was highlighted in yellow as the retailer where my ticket was purchased. Henderson's Corner Store was 2 miles from my parents' house, right next to Frank's auto shop. I had driven past it thousands of times but rarely stopped there. It was the kind of place that sold cigarettes, energy drinks, and lottery tickets to people who worked in the industrial area. When I walked into Henderson's that afternoon, Mr. Henderson himself was behind the counter, a heavy-set man in his 60s who had owned the store for 20 years. He recognized me immediately. "Rhonda Brennan, heard you hit it big on one of my tickets. Your dad must be pretty excited about that." "My dad?" Mr. Henderson's smile faltered slightly. "Well, yeah. He's the one who bought it. Been coming in here for weeks asking about special promotions and when new ticket batches were coming in. Real persistent about wanting to buy tickets with better odds. When I got that promotional batch 3 weeks ago, he bought 15 of them." The world tilted sideways. My father had bought 15 promotional lottery tickets with better odds, and somehow one of them had ended up as my graduation gift. This wasn't random luck. This was calculated. Did he say why he wanted tickets with better odds? Mr. Henderson scratched his gray beard thoughtfully. Said something about a graduation gift that needed to be special. Wanted to make sure whoever got it would win something significant. Seemed like a nice gesture at the time. I thanked Mr. Henderson and sat in my car outside his store, trying to process what I'd learned. My parents had taken out a home equity loan to buy Madison a house, then deliberately purchased lottery tickets with better odds to give me as a graduation gift, expecting me to win and share the money to help with their new financial burden. The whole thing was a setup, but the manipulation went deeper than I had imagined. That evening, I decided to search through my old mail, looking for anything that might explain other financial discrepancies I'd noticed over the years. In a box of college documents, I found something that made my hands shake. 3 job offer letters that I'd never seen before. The first was from Denver Financial Group, offering me a position as a junior analyst with a starting salary of $68,000, dated 6 months ago. The second was from Mountain States Credit Union, offering $65,000 for an entry-level loan officer position. The third was from Colorado Investment Partners, offering $72,000 plus benefits for a financial planning assistant role. All 3 letters were addressed to me at my parents' house. All 3 had been opened, and I'd never seen any of them. I confronted my parents that night after Madison had gone home. They were in the living room watching television, looking relaxed and normal until I walked in carrying the job offer letters. "Explain these," I said, dropping the letters on the coffee table between them. Carol picked up the first letter, and her face went pale. Frank reached for the television remote and turned off the sound, but his hands were shaking slightly. "Rhonda," Carol began, "we can explain." "Please do. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been intercepting my mail and hiding job opportunities from me. Jobs that would have paid me more than enough to be financially independent." Frank cleared his throat. "We were trying to protect you from making hasty decisions. You're young, and these companies can be exploitative. We thought you needed more time to consider your options." "More time, or more dependence on family financial help?" The accusation hung in the air between us. Carol's eyes filled with tears, but I was too angry to care. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded. "Just these 3 letters," Carol whispered. "Don't lie to me anymore, Mom. How long have you been intercepting my mail?" Frank's shoulders sagged in defeat. "About 2 years. Maybe a little longer." 2 years. During my final 2 years of college, when I was struggling to pay expenses and taking out student loans, my parents had been hiding job offers and financial opportunities from me, keeping me financially dependent while showering Madison with money and gifts. "Why?" The question came out as a whisper. Carol was crying openly now. "Because Madison has always needed more help. She's not as naturally gifted as you are, Rhonda. She's not as smart or as capable. We knew you would be fine no matter what, but Madison needs support. So you decided to sabotage my career prospects to keep me available as family financial support?" "It wasn't sabotage," Frank protested weakly. "We just wanted to make sure the family stayed together, that we could all help each other." I looked at my parents sitting on their couch, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen them, and realized that everything I thought I knew about my family was built on lies and manipulation. They had been controlling my financial future for years, stealing opportunities from me to maintain some twisted sense of family balance where Madison got everything and I got nothing but responsibility. But they had made one crucial mistake. In their desperation to keep me financially dependent, they had given me a lottery ticket that made me completely independent. $3 million was enough money to walk away from all of them forever. And that's when I started to wonder what other secrets they were hiding. The next morning, I did something I probably should have done years earlier. I pulled my credit report. What I found there made the intercepted job letters seem like minor offenses. There were 3 accounts I'd never opened. A credit card with Pinnacle Bank showing a balance of $12,700. A personal loan with Mountain Credit Union for $8,500 with 18 months of payment history. Most disturbing was a co-signed auto loan for $26,000, with regular payments being made from an account I didn't recognize. Someone had been using my identity to secure credit for years, and judging by the payment patterns, they were making the minimum payments to keep everything current. My credit score was actually higher than it should have been because of these accounts, which is probably why I'd never noticed them before. I drove straight to Pinnacle Bank with copies of the fraudulent accounts and my identification. The customer service manager, a professional woman named Angela Thompson, pulled up the detailed account history. "This credit card was opened 2 years ago with an online application," Angela explained. "The address on file is 1247 Maple Street in Denver. My parents' address. The spending pattern shows mostly retail purchases, restaurants, and cash advances. Regular payments have been made automatically from a checking account belonging to." She paused, checking her screen. "Carol and Franklin Brennan." My parents had opened a credit card in my name and had been using it to fund Madison's lifestyle. The purchases lined up perfectly with Madison's social media posts. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, weekend trips to Colorado Springs and Aspen. The auto loan was even worse. It was for Madison's Honda Civic, the car she'd received for her 16th birthday that I'd always assumed my parents had saved for. They'd used my credit to buy her car, then made payments from their own account to maintain the fiction that it was their gift to her. Angela helped me file fraud reports for all 3 accounts, but she also explained the legal reality. Proving family fraud is complicated when the perpetrators have been making payments and the accounts haven't been used irresponsibly. The authorities would investigate, but prosecution would depend on whether I wanted to press charges against my own parents. I left the bank feeling nauseous and drove home to confront them again. But when I arrived, Madison's car was in the driveway along with Tyler's truck, and I could hear voices in the backyard. They were planning something, and I had a feeling it wasn't a family barbecue. I parked down the street and walked around to the side of the house where I could hear their conversation through the open kitchen window. "She's being completely unreasonable about this," Madison was saying. "The lottery money should be shared. We're family." "Madison's right," Tyler's voice chimed in. "I talked to my lawyer buddy, and he thinks we might have a case for claiming the lottery ticket was a family gift. If we can prove your parents intended it to benefit everyone, we could force her to split the winnings." My father's voice was strained. "Tyler, I don't think that's the right approach. Rhonda's smart. She's going to figure out what we've been doing, and if she gets angry enough, she might." "Might what?" Carol's voice was sharp with anxiety. "She might press charges for the identity theft. The credit cards, the loan. Angela Thompson at Pinnacle Bank called me this morning. Rhonda knows about everything." The silence that followed was deafening. I pressed closer to the window, my heart pounding. Madison's voice was smaller when she spoke again. "What do you mean, identity theft?" Frank sighed heavily. "We've been using Rhonda's credit to help with expenses. Your car loan, some credit cards, the personal loan we took to pay for your college when our savings ran short. We always made the payments, so we didn't think it was really hurting anything." "You stole her identity?" Tyler's voice rose an octave. "Are you insane? That's a federal crime." "We were helping our family," Carol said defensively. "Everything we did was for our daughters. The lottery ticket was supposed to solve all these problems. Rhonda would win enough to pay off the debts and help Madison with her house, and everyone would be happy. Except now she knows," Madison said quietly. "And she's not sharing anything." Tyler's voice took on a calculating tone. "Maybe she doesn't have to know. We know that she knows. We could still pursue the legal angle. Claim the lottery ticket was always meant to be shared family property." "With what lawyer?" Frank asked. "Tyler, we can't afford a legal battle with Rhonda. If she presses criminal charges, we could all go to jail." "Not all of us," Tyler said. "Madison didn't know about the identity theft." But Madison's response surprised me. "Yes, I did." The admission hung in the air like smoke. My twin sister, the one who was supposed to be closest to me in the world, had known our parents were stealing my identity for years. "I knew about the credit cards," Madison continued. "I knew the car loan was in Rhonda's name. I didn't think it mattered because they were making the payments. And Rhonda was always so responsible with money anyway. I figured she could handle it better than I could." "Madison?" Tyler's voice was cautious now. "You just admitted to participating in identity theft. That makes you an accomplice." The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. My entire family had been systematically stealing from me for years, using my credit to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford, while keeping me financially dependent through intercepted job offers and emotional manipulation. But as I walked back to my car, a bigger realization hit me. If my parents were desperate enough to take out a home equity loan and commit identity theft, if they were willing to involve Tyler in legal schemes to claim my lottery money, then there had to be something else. Something bigger they were hiding. I drove to the county courthouse and spent the afternoon searching through public records. What I found in the adoption records section changed everything I thought I knew about my family. Madison Elizabeth Brennan had been legally adopted by Franklin and Carol Brennan on March 15th, 23 years ago. She wasn't my biological twin sister. According to the documents, she'd been placed in foster care after her biological parents died in a car accident, then adopted by my parents when she was 3 years old. The same age I was when my biological twin sister died. Everything finally made sense. The favoritism, the guilt, the financial manipulation. My parents had lost their biological daughter and replaced her with Madison, then spent 20 years trying to recreate the family they'd lost by treating Madison like their real daughter and me like an obligation. But they'd never told either of us the truth. I sat in my car outside the courthouse, holding copies of Madison's adoption papers, and realized that my entire life had been built on a lie. Madison wasn't my sister. My real sister was dead. And my parents had been using both of us to play out some psychological drama for 2 decades. The cruelest part was that Madison probably didn't know either. She'd been living a lie just as much as I had, except her lie came with houses and credit cards and unconditional parental love. Now I had to decide what to do with the truth. I spent 3 days researching adoption records before I found what I was looking for. Hidden in a file marked sealed records was information about my biological family, including a note that my twin sister, Rebecca Marie Brennan, had died from pneumonia complications when we were 3 years old. The records also contained something I hadn't expected: contact information from my biological parents, David and Sharon Collins, who had fought for custody of me after Rebecca's death, but lost to the Brennans in a disputed adoption proceeding. My biological parents were still alive. They lived in Fort Collins, just 90 minutes north of Denver. The night before I planned to contact them, I decided to confront my family with everything I'd learned. Madison was staying at my parents' house because of plumbing problems in her new home that insurance wouldn't cover, though I suspected the real reason was that she couldn't afford the house payments without family help. I found them all in the living room watching television after dinner. Tyler was there too, sprawled on the couch like he belonged there, which irritated me more than it should have. "We need to talk," I announced, setting a manila folder on the coffee table. "All of us." Carol reached for the folder, but I pulled it back. "Before you look at those, I want to know how long you plan to keep lying to us." Frank muted the television. "Rhonda, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Madison's adoption papers. I'm talking about the fact that my real twin sister is dead, and you replaced her with Madison without telling either of us the truth." The color drained from Madison's face. She looked at our parents, then back at me, her mouth opening and closing without sound. "You're lying," Madison whispered. "That's impossible." I opened the folder and handed her the adoption documents. "March 15th, 23 years ago. You were adopted by Franklin and Carol Brennan after your biological parents died in a car accident. You were 3 years old, the same age my biological twin sister was when she died." Madison stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. Tyler leaned over to read them, his face growing serious as he processed the legal terminology. Carol started crying immediately, the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs that come from years of buried guilt. Frank just looked old, older than his 57 years, like the weight of the deception had finally become too heavy to carry. "We were going to tell you," Frank said quietly. "Both of you. When you were older, when you could understand." "I'm 22 years old," I said. "How much older did I need to be?" "We were afraid," Carol whispered through her tears. "Afraid you would leave us. Afraid Madison would want to find information about her biological family. Afraid everything would fall apart." Madison was still staring at the adoption papers. "My real parents are dead?" "Yes," Frank said gently. "They died when you were very young. You don't remember them. But I'm not Rhonda's sister." The words hit harder than I'd expected. Even though I'd known the truth for days, hearing Madison say it out loud made it real in a way that documents couldn't. "Not biologically," Carol said. "But you've been sisters for 19 years. That has to count for something." Tyler cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Maybe I should go. This seems like a family conversation." "No," Madison said sharply. "Stay. Because apparently I don't know what family means anymore." She turned to our parents with an expression I'd never seen before. Hurt mixed with anger, mixed with something that looked like betrayal. "Is this why you always treated me differently? Because you felt guilty about replacing Rhonda's real sister with me?" "Madison, no," Carol said desperately. "We love you. We've always loved you. You weren't a replacement for Rebecca. You were our daughter. Then why all the special treatment? Why the house, the car, the credit cards, the college money? Why did Rhonda get nothing while I got everything?" Frank and Carol exchanged one of their loaded looks, and I realized there was still more they weren't telling us. "Because," Frank said slowly, "your biological parents left you a trust fund. A substantial one. We've been managing it for you since the adoption, and when you turn 25, you'll inherit almost $400,000. The silence that followed was absolute. Madison had a trust fund. She was going to inherit $400,000. My parents had been spoiling her not out of favoritism, but because she was already wealthy and they'd been spending her own money on her. "Where's my inheritance?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Rhonda, Carol began, your biological parents. David and Sharon Collins. They never stopped fighting the adoption. They wanted you back. The court case went on for 3 years, and by the end, all the legal fees had consumed their savings. There wasn't anything left to leave you. But they're still alive. The admission seemed to surprise them. Frank sat up straighter. How do you know that? I pulled out the second folder I'd brought. Because I found them. David and Sharon Collins. They live in Fort Collins. They've been looking for me for 20 years. Carol's face went white. Rhonda, you can't. Please. They tried to take you away from us once. Maybe they should have succeeded. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I was tired of protecting everyone else's feelings when no one had ever protected mine. Madison was still processing the trust fund revelation. $400,000? It was your biological parents' life insurance money plus some property they owned, Frank explained. We've been investing it conservatively. By the time you turn 25, it should be worth even more. So you've been spending my money on me my whole life? We've been taking care of you the way your biological parents would have wanted. Tyler spoke up for the first time in several minutes. This changes everything about the lottery situation. Madison's going to be wealthy anyway. She doesn't need Rhonda's lottery money. Madison shot him a look that could have frozen hell. Is that all you care about? The money? I care about you, Tyler said defensively. But yeah, the money matters. It means you don't need to depend on family help anymore. That's when Madison did something that surprised everyone in the room. She started laughing. Not happy laughter, but the kind of bitter, painful laughter that comes from recognizing how absurd your life has become. None of this is real, she said, still laughing. My whole life is fake. My parents aren't my parents. My sister isn't my sister. My boyfriend only cares about money I didn't even know I had. Even my name probably isn't really Madison. Frank leaned forward. Your biological name was Emily Rose Patterson. Your biological parents called you Emmy. The laughter stopped abruptly. Madison, or Emily, or whoever she really was, stared at Frank like he'd slapped her. 22 years, she said quietly. 22 years of living someone else's life. I found myself feeling sorry for her. Despite everything. We'd both been living lies, just different kinds of lies. She'd gotten the privileges, but she'd also gotten the complete erasure of her identity. I'd gotten the neglect, but I'd also gotten the truth about who I really was. Or at least, part of the truth. I'm calling my biological parents tomorrow, I announced. David and Sharon Collins. They deserve to know I'm alive and safe. Carol started crying again. Rhonda, please don't do anything hasty. We're still your family. We raised you. We love you. You stole from me. You lied to me. You kept me financially dependent while spending someone else's trust fund on my fake sister. That's not love, Mom. That's control. Frank stood up slowly. What do you want from us, Rhonda? How do we fix this? I looked around the room at the people I'd called family for 22 years and realized that the lottery ticket had given me something more valuable than $3 million. It had given me the independence to tell the truth. I want you to stop lying. I want you to pay back every penny you stole from my credit. I want Madison to understand that her entire lifestyle has been funded by money her dead parents left for her. And I want the truth about why you really gave me that lottery ticket. Carol and Frank exchanged another look, and I knew there was still one more secret they were hiding. The truth, Frank said heavily, is that we're about to lose everything. The auto shop is failing. The house payments are behind. We used Madison's trust fund to cover business expenses and personal debts, and now we can't pay it back. When Madison turns 25 next year, we'll have to tell her there's no money left. Madison's face went white. You spent my inheritance? We borrowed against it, Carol said desperately. We always planned to pay it back. How much is left? Frank's voice was barely audible. About $30,000. $400,000, reduced to $30,000. My parents hadn't just been stealing from me. They'd been stealing from Madison too, spending her biological parents' money to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford. Madison stood up slowly, her legs shaky. Tyler was right about one thing. This does change everything. She walked to the front door, then turned back to look at all of us. I'm going to my house. My fake house that I can't afford, that you bought with stolen money. And I'm going to figure out who I really am, because it's obviously not the person I've been pretending to be for 22 years. After she left, Tyler following behind her like a lost puppy, I sat in the living room with my parents and felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete clarity about what I needed to do. I'm pressing charges, I said quietly, for the identity theft, the credit fraud, all of it. And I'm calling David and Sharon Collins tomorrow. Carol reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Rhonda, please. We're your parents. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. No, I said, standing up. You're not. You're strangers who stole 22 years of my life to play house with someone else's children. But that ends now. As I walked toward the door, Frank called after me. What about forgiveness? What about family loyalty? I turned back one last time. I'll save my loyalty for people who actually exist. My biological parents have been waiting 20 years to hear from me. I think they've waited long enough. And for the first time in my life, I walked out of that house feeling like I was finally going home. The next morning, I drove to Fort Collins with a heart full of nervous energy and a folder full of documents proving my identity. David and Sharon Collins lived in a modest ranch house on a tree-lined street that reminded me of the neighborhoods I'd imagined when I was little and dreamed about having different parents. Sharon Collins answered the door, and I knew immediately that I was looking at my biological mother. We had the same green eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same way of tilting our heads when we were thinking. She stared at me for a long moment, then covered her mouth with her hands. "Rhonda?" she whispered. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Rhonda Brennan, but I think my real name might be Rhonda Collins." She started crying and pulled me into a hug that felt like coming home after a lifetime of being lost. David appeared behind her, a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes who looked at me like I was a miracle. "We never stopped looking for you," he said simply. 20 years, and we never stopped hoping." They invited me inside, and I spent the next 4 hours learning about my real family. David was a retired teacher. Sharon was a nurse at the local hospital. They had tried to have more children after losing me and Rebecca, but it hadn't happened, so they'd poured their energy into their careers and into searching for me. "The Brennans fought us in court," Sharon explained, showing me thick folders of legal documents. "They claimed we were unfit parents because we couldn't afford expensive lawyers. They had more money, better connections, and the sympathy factor of having lost their own daughter." David added, "We spent everything we had on legal fees trying to get you back. Sold our house, liquidated our retirement savings, took out loans we're still paying off, but it wasn't enough. We hired private investigators every few years," Sharon said. "But the Brennans moved several times when you were younger, and sealed adoption records made it almost impossible to track you. They showed me photo albums they'd kept of me, from the brief time I'd lived with them after Rebecca's death. Pictures of me at 3 years old, playing in their backyard, finger painting at their kitchen table, sleeping in a bedroom decorated with stars and moons. "You loved astronomy," David said softly. "You used to point at the sky and say you wanted to count all the stars. You had a stuffed elephant named Mr. Peanuts that you carried everywhere," Sharon added. "You cried for him every night for months after the adoption went through. Learning about my real childhood, even the brief 3 months I'd spent with them, felt like discovering a missing piece of myself. The Brennan house had never felt like home, but this place, with these people, felt like where I belonged. I told them everything. The favoritism toward Madison, the identity theft, the intercepted job offers, the lottery ticket setup, the discovery that Madison was adopted too. They listened without judgment, though I could see anger building in David's eyes as I described the financial abuse. "That explains a lot," Sharon said when I finished. "We always wondered why they were so determined to keep you away from us. We thought maybe they genuinely loved you and wanted to protect their family. But they were protecting their guilt," David said. "They replaced their dead daughter with someone else's child, then had to deal with you as a reminder of what they'd lost." Sharon reached across the table and took my hand. "Rhonda, I want you to know that not a day has gone by that we haven't thought about you. We have college funds we've been contributing to for 20 years, hoping that someday we'd find you and could help with your education." "You have college funds for me?" David nodded. "Your college fund has about $68,000 in it now. We never touched it, even when we were struggling financially, because it was for your future. $68,000. While the Brennans were intercepting my job offers and keeping me financially dependent, my biological parents had been saving money for my education. There's something else, Sharon said gently. We've been seeing a family therapist for years, trying to process the loss and the legal battle. Doctor Martinez has been helping us prepare for the possibility that we might find you someday. She's been very clear that we can't expect you to instantly accept us as parents, and we don't want to pressure you. But we'd like to try to build a relationship with you, if you're willing, David added. Whatever that looks like. We know the Brennans raised you, and they're the parents you've known. We just want to be part of your life somehow. I looked at these two people who had fought for me, saved for me, and never stopped hoping to find me, and felt something I'd never experienced with the Brennans. Unconditional love, without expectations or manipulation. I'd like that, I said. I'd like that very much. That afternoon, Sharon and David drove me back to Denver to retrieve my belongings from the Brennan house. I had called ahead to let Frank and Carol know we were coming, but I wasn't prepared for the scene we found. Madison's car was in the driveway, but Tyler's truck was gone. When we walked into the house, we found Madison sitting at the kitchen table with legal documents spread in front of her, tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong?" I asked, forgetting for a moment that we were in the middle of a family crisis. Madison looked up with red, swollen eyes. "Tyler's gone. He left this morning after I told him about the trust fund being spent. Said he couldn't be with someone who didn't have money." Carol was hovering nearby, wringing her hands. "Madison, honey, you're better off without him. He was only interested in what you could give him." "Just like all of you," Madison said bitterly. "Tyler wanted my money. You and Dad spent my money. Rhonda's biological parents fought for her while mine are dead. I don't have anyone or anything real in my life." I introduced Madison to David and Sharon, who were kind but understandably awkward about meeting the child who had taken their daughter's place in the Brennan family. "Madison," Sharon said gently, "you were a victim in this situation too. You lost your biological parents when you were too young to remember them, and then you were raised with lies about your identity. That's not your fault." Madison wiped her eyes. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about pressing charges. I think you should do it." The announcement surprised everyone in the room. "Madison," Frank said desperately, "we're still your parents. We raised you. We love you." "You stole from both of us," Madison said firmly. "You stole Rhonda's credit and opportunities, and you stole my inheritance. You lied about our identities for 22 years. Love doesn't excuse that." Carol started crying again. "We were trying to hold the family together. We made mistakes, but our intentions were good." "Good intentions don't pay back $400,000, Madison said. "And they don't give Rhonda back the job opportunities she lost, or the relationship with her biological parents that you stole from her." David stepped forward. "Frank, Carol, you've put both girls in an impossible position. You've committed serious crimes, and you've damaged two young women who trusted you." Frank looked older than I'd ever seen him. "What do you want us to do?" "Take responsibility," I said. "Cooperate with the authorities. Make restitution for the financial theft. Get therapy to understand why you thought any of this was acceptable. And stop lying," Madison added. "About everything. To everyone. Starting now." Over the next week, Madison and I worked together to untangle the financial mess our parents had created. We filed criminal complaints for identity theft and fraud. We met with investigators who documented years of financial abuse. We contacted lawyers who helped us understand our rights and options. The hardest part was testifying about the emotional impact of the deception, explaining to strangers how it felt to discover that your entire family identity was built on lies, describing the damage caused by systematically hiding opportunities and manipulating finances. But something unexpected happened during that process. Madison and I, despite not being biological sisters, started acting like real sisters for the first time. We supported each other through the legal proceedings. We shared our anger and hurt and confusion about identity and family. "I keep thinking about who I might have been if they'd told us the truth," Madison said one afternoon as we sat in a lawyer's office waiting for our appointment. You'd still be you, I said, just with your real name and your real history. Emily Rose Patterson, she said thoughtfully. I looked up my biological parents online. They were teachers. They volunteered at animal shelters. They seemed like they were good people. They were. And David and Sharon are good people too. The difference is that good people don't steal from children and lie for 20 years. Madison was quiet for a moment. I'm going to sell the house. I can't afford it anyway, and it doesn't feel like mine knowing it was bought with stolen money. What will you do? Start over. Get a real job with my real name. Figure out who Emily Patterson is when she's not being financially supported by other people's money. What about the $30,000 that's left from your trust fund? Madison had thought about this. I'm going to use half of it to pay back some of the money they stole from you. It won't cover everything, but it's a start. Madison, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do. I benefited from money that should have gone to your opportunities. I can't give you back the job offers or the time with your biological parents, but I can give you back some of the financial security they stole. It was the first truly selfless thing I'd ever seen Madison do, and it made me realize that maybe the person she'd been for 22 years wasn't the person she really was either. The criminal charges against Frank and Carol Brennan resulted in plea agreements that required full restitution and probation. Frank's auto shop went into bankruptcy, and they were forced to sell their house to pay back some of what they'd stolen. But the real justice came from something simpler: the truth. 1 year later, I stood in the backyard of David and Sharon Collins' house in Fort Collins, watching my biological father teach my adopted sister Emily how to use a telescope to identify constellations. It wasn't the family reunion anyone could have predicted, but it was real in a way that 22 years of Brennan family life had never been. Emily had legally changed her name back to Emily Rose Patterson and was working as a communications coordinator for a nonprofit organization that helped adopted children connect with their birth families. The irony wasn't lost on any of us, but Emily said it felt like the right way to use her experience with identity confusion. I want to help other kids avoid what we went through, she explained. Being lied to about your identity causes damage that takes years to heal. She was right. Even with therapy and the support of my biological family, I still struggled with trusting people and believing that relationships could be honest. But I was working on it, one day at a time. My lottery winnings had been invested wisely with the help of a financial advisor who had no connection to my family drama. The money provided security and freedom, but more importantly, it had given me the independence to discover who I really was. I'd used some of the winnings to start an educational foundation that provided scholarships for adopted children and young adults who had been victims of financial abuse by family members. The foundation's motto was Truth and Independence, and we'd already helped 47 young people start fresh lives. David and Sharon had become the parents I'd always needed, supportive without being controlling, proud of my achievements without expecting me to sacrifice for other people's mistakes. They attended my foundation events, celebrated my successes, and provided emotional support without asking for anything in return. The relationship with Emily had been more complicated to navigate. We weren't biological sisters, but we'd shared 22 years of parallel experiences with the same lying parents. She was dealing with her own therapy and personal growth, learning to be Emily Patterson instead of Madison Brennan, figuring out what she wanted from life when she wasn't being financially enabled. Frank and Carol Brennan had completed their court-ordered restitution and were attending family therapy, both individually and together. They'd reached out several times asking for reconciliation meetings, but neither Emily nor I was ready for that conversation. Maybe someday, but not yet. The healing process takes as long as it takes, Dr. Martinez, our family therapist, had explained. You can't rush forgiveness, and you shouldn't feel guilty about protecting yourselves while you process this trauma. Tyler had disappeared entirely after Emily's trust fund situation became clear. Last we'd heard, he was living in Phoenix and working construction for his cousin's company, which apparently did exist after all. As evening settled over Fort Collins and the first stars became visible, Emily looked up from the telescope and smiled at me. I think I found the Big Dipper, she said proudly. That's the Little Dipper, David corrected gently. The Big Dipper is over there. Emily laughed. I'm still learning. 22 years of living lies makes it hard to trust that you're seeing things clearly. Sharon joined us on the back patio with hot chocolate and homemade cookies. You're both seeing things clearly now. That's what matters. I looked around at this chosen family gathering on a peaceful evening in Colorado and realized that the lottery ticket had been the least important gift I'd received that graduation day. The real gift had been discovering that truth was more valuable than money, that real love didn't come with conditions or manipulation, and that it was never too late to start living an honest life. I have something to tell you all, Emily announced, setting down her hot chocolate. I've been in contact with a private investigator who specializes in adoption cases. I want to learn more about my biological parents and see if they have any living relatives. David nodded approvingly. That's a healthy way to honor your history. I'm not trying to replace this family, Emily said quickly. This is the first real family I've ever had. But I want to understand where I came from, just like Rhonda needed to understand her real history. Family isn't about biology, Sharon said wisely. It's about people who choose to love and support each other honestly. You can have more than one family, and you can choose the people who deserve your loyalty. As the evening grew darker and the stars grew brighter, I thought about the question I'd been asked repeatedly over the past year. Did I regret the way everything happened? The answer was complicated. I regretted the lies, the manipulation, the lost opportunities, and the years of feeling like something was fundamentally wrong with me. But I didn't regret discovering the truth, even though it had been painful. The lottery ticket that had started this entire chain of events sat framed on my apartment wall, not because of the money it had won, but because it represented the moment my real life began. $3 million had bought me independence, but independence had bought me something more precious. The ability to choose my own family based on love and honesty, rather than obligation and fear. Frank and Carol Brennan had tried to control our futures by manipulating our pasts, but they'd forgotten something important. The truth always comes out eventually. And when it does, you discover who you really are and who truly loves you. Emily was learning to trust her own judgment for the first time in her life. David and Sharon were finally able to parent the daughter they'd never stopped fighting for. And I was building a life based on authenticity rather than pleasing people who saw me as a means to an end. The most important lesson I'd learned was that family loyalty shouldn't be blind. Real love doesn't ask you to sacrifice your identity, your opportunities, or your financial security for someone else's comfort. Real love celebrates your successes without jealousy, supports your independence without resentment, and tells you the truth even when it's painful. Thank you, I said to David and Sharon as we prepared to go inside. For never giving up, for fighting for me even when you couldn't win, for saving money for my education even when you were struggling, for showing me what real parents look like. Sharon hugged me tightly. Thank you for having the courage to find us, for giving us a second chance to be your parents. As we walked toward the house, Emily fell into step beside me. Do you think we'll ever forgive them? I think we'll eventually understand them, I said. But forgiveness is different from trust. They'll have to earn that back, if it's even possible. What they did to us was wrong, Emily said firmly. But I'm glad we found each other. And I'm glad you found your real parents. We found our real family, I corrected. All of us together. And that night, as I fell asleep in the guest room of the house where I should have grown up, I realized that sometimes the most devastating betrayals lead to the most beautiful discoveries. Sometimes you have to lose the family you thought you had to find the family you actually need. The lottery ticket may have won me $3 million, but the courage to tell the truth had won me something infinitely more valuable. A life built on honesty, love, and the freedom to choose who deserved my loyalty. That was worth more than all the lottery tickets in the world. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was lying to you about something important? How did you handle the betrayal, and did it change the way you think about family loyalty? Share your story in the comments below because your experience might help someone else who's dealing with family deception. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your authentic self. And don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize truth over family expectations. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that you deserve relationships built on honesty and love, not manipulation and control. Until next time, choose truth over comfort, and choose people who choose you back.